So, Blake, the first and second rounds of the tournament were a success in our book. You know the Full Court Trap podcast. We love college hoops. We love seeing the best of the best get their shine on the biggest stage. But apparently some media personalities around this great nation didn't really like what they saw in this first and second round. And it comes from our guy, Stephen A. Smith, over at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. He said that if this trend of no Cinderella teams continues, it will be the death of college basketball. Now, keep in mind, this comes from a guy whose forte is mainly the NBA, and he watches college basketball maybe once a year for a 3-week span that is only in March Madness. So, Stephen A., I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. You have no clue what you're talking about, and you are completely out of your depth here. I mean, let's just go down the books here. 2024, Oakland, they make it to the second round. They take down Kentucky. NC State makes the Final Four as an 11 seed that same year. The year before that, we had Princeton take down Arizona as a 15 seed. We had, in 2022, 8-seeded North Carolina made a national title game. 15-seeded St. Peter's made an Elite Eight. Blake, all of these things have happened over the course of NIL coming to the forefront of college basketball. And it's not just Stephen A. that's been saying this. He just has the biggest platform, and obviously he's going to get the most clicks. But the talk of the town has really been NIL and the transfer portal ruining these Cinderella runs just because we've had one chalky tournament so far. But that's just not true whatsoever. And I just don't understand how people can look at the tournaments like we've had in 2024, 23, 22, and then in 21 as well, that COVID bubble year where UCLA made it from the first four to the Final Four. Like, the Cinderella runs by no means are dead, and the death of college basketball is nowhere upon us just because we have a year where the cream of the crop and the top of the food chain in college basketball has really dominated. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this because this was just something that I read today, and it just absolutely disgusted me because it's like I said in the first video, as the wise Drake once said, bench players talking like starters. I hate it. I hate it when casuals talk about college basketball. But, Blake, you take a stab at this. I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, you really hit everything I was thinking head on. I'm a big Stephen A. Smith guy. I think he's hilarious. I think he's good for the sport of basketball. But when you're sitting here openly on ESPN talking about how college basketball's death is on the cusp right now because we're not seeing Cinderellas make a run, you're completely wrong. I think you need to just keep your head out of college basketball if you're going to say stuff like that. Obviously, NIL is playing a big part in Cinderella teams maybe not making a run. But, I mean, last year, the year before, we saw NIL being a factor. We saw teams dropping millions of dollars for players. Like, it hasn't changed all that much in the past 2-3 years. Like, it's been consistent with the NIL stuff. I just think these top teams are just that good this year. Florida, Duke, Kentucky even, Auburn, obviously. Like, these are teams that, I mean, they spent a decent amount of NIL money, but, I mean, they got some of the best coaches in college basketball. And I mean, if your team is not set up to beat these teams, then obviously you ain't gonna have a Cinderella team or Cinderella run. And I think these teams are just that deep, and it just happens in college basketball. March Madness is a crazy thing. Like, every year we see something that we haven't seen before. I mean, this year's no different. I don't recall the last time that like the top dogs of the college basketball season are the ones playing in the Sweet 16. So, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's really dumb to say the death of college basketball is near. Because, I mean, if you're an NBA fanatic, then, like Stephen A. Smith, he literally is mainly NBA. Yes, he covers other sports. Yes, he's great at his job. I love his content. He's hilarious, but I mean, I just think that's kind of egotistical thing to say that college basketball is about to die because NBA, I can't sit still and watch an NBA game start to finish, because it's just not fun hoops. Like, I like seeing the crowd get involved. And, I mean, we see that with the Cinderella games and March Madness. You don't see that in the NBA.
Yeah, no, and we're not even like 2 years removed from when Fairleigh Dickinson took down Purdue as a
Yeah.
16 seed for the second ever 16 over a 1. Like, this
Yeah.
narrative that these upsets and stuff are just going to completely go away or just inaccurate, because we've seen it. And this year is just a tale of the top dogs being the best of the entire field. And I mean, some years that's going to happen. This narrative that college basketball is dying is stupid. And John Phantom made a good point. In 2015 and 2016 tournaments, the only non-high major to make the Sweet 16 was Gonzaga. And I mean, Gonzaga, when we think about them, we don't consider them as like a mid-major by any sort. So this isn't the first time that we've seen something like this where things get really chalky. It's just the way things crumble sometimes. And we're definitely not seeing the death of Cinderellas by any means. And you look at this tournament overall, like, sure, there weren't a ton of upsets, but you had Drake taking down Missouri in an 11 versus 6 matchup. That was a group of guys that were all brought from the D2 ranks, and they ended up taking down a team that was in the top 5 of the SEC for the better part of the whole season. You had Colorado State as a 12 seed take down a Memphis team that was very solid, and they took Maryland to the break before Derek Queen hit an unbelievable game winner. You would be looking at a 12 seed in the Sweet 16 right now if that shot just goes an inch off, or maybe they whistle for a travel like some people have been yelling for. I don't agree with that. I don't think you end the game on that kind of a call.
No.
And every rule
Stop
analyst
crying, people.
Yeah,
That's not a travel.
Every single rule analyst that has been asked about it has said, no, that's not a travel. He took a gather step and then he made the bucket, so that was clean. But yeah, it's completely just irrational to say that the sport's dying. McNeese as well, they took down Clemson, fought against Purdue, but ultimately just didn't have enough in the tank. Then you had the Amir Khan saga, mid-major guy, that in a whole other aspect, getting some love for the mid-major side of things, student manager and whatnot. The magic of March is not gone by any means, Blake. We saw it in spurts so far in this tournament, just not maybe at the clip that these casuals are used to seeing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think it's just complete BS that people are crying about Cinderella stuff. Like,
yeah.
I think that talk needs to be I think that talk needs to be put to rest, because, I mean, this tournament's been just as fun as last year, and we're not seeing crazy Cinderella runs. I'd honestly much rather see these top dogs go head-to-head every game and be the real best of the best in college basketball. I think that's how it should be in every sport, too.
Yeah, I mean, I love the first and second round upsets, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, when you look at the slates like we've got this week, starting on Thursday and Friday, Tennessee versus Kentucky in a 3 versus 2, Houston versus Purdue in a 1 versus 4, Duke versus Arizona in a 1 versus 4, BYU versus Alabama, 2 versus 6, Auburn, Michigan, 1 versus 5, Ole Miss, Michigan State in a 6v2, Texas Tech, Arkansas, that's a 3v10 matchup, and then Florida, Maryland, 1v4. I mean, that's a great group of games that we're going to be watching. And I think that really, if you want to draw in more viewers to college basketball, that I get that the Cinderellas are going to do that, but also at the same time, you want your best teams and your best players to be front and center. And that's no disrespect to these mid-major teams at all. But when you look at these players like the Derek Queens for Maryland, Cooper Flagg, you got Walter Clayton Jr., Janai Broome, all these guys with the top dogs. I would much rather see that than see some scrappy 8-9 seed or an 11 and a 12 pull an upset just because a better team had one bad night.
Yeah, I agree. And, like, most of the time we see these teams that get a first-round upset and they just fall in the second round. Like, like, they're having a Cinderella run for zero reason.
Yep. Yeah, don't let the mainstream networks fool you people. College basketball is alive and well. It's in a good
Yeah.
place. I think that NIL, that while there are some critiques to it and some things that definitely need to get handled on that side of things, it's not ruining the sport by any means. So Stephen A., we love you, but we just had to voice our grievances with that. If you'd like to invite the Full Court Trap podcast on First Take to talk
Let
about
us
this, hey,
on. Let us
I'm
on.
open. I'm
I
open
got nothing but
anytime.
time.
Yeah, we got time to defend this great sport. We're locked in on March. We're not taking any slander, but yeah. Moral of the story is, people, college basketball, the NCAA tournament is in very good hands. Nothing's dying. This has just been a tournament so far of the best teams showing why they're the best.